And
all the way.
All the way.
And all the way up the motorway.
We'll not mention helicopters, but
No.
and I'll just leave you in his good hands.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much for your kind invitation today. I just said to Rachel, I'm used to sort of 1 hour speeches, so it's a real challenge for me to get this into 20 minutes. So I'm just going to jump straight in. We're all self-employed, I guess. I've just arrived in the last 20 minutes, and we're all struggling and dealing with the same challenges, whether we're north or south of the border, I guess. But there is the argument that things are improving. And looking at the papers over the last couple of weeks, we're looking at record low interest rates. We're looking at the housing market showing an increase in valuations for the 6th consecutive month. We're looking at Ireland exiting the Troika grip at the end of the year, returning to the bond markets. 25,000 less people apparently signing on the live register. There's an argument that says the worst is over and we're heading back to more comfortable times. It isn't an argument that I agree with. I'm not one of these people that that I continue to beat the doom and gloom drum, nor am I one of the people that tries to soundbite certain positives. My own analysis, for what it's worth, is that I actually think we're facing an even greater challenge than we faced in the last 12 months in my own business, which is in Clonmel. 2013 has proven to be the toughest year of the last 5. In rural Ireland, I believe it's actually getting harder and not getting easier. So let's go back. Interest rates are at record lows. Yet for some reason we have a massive mortgage issue in this country. Arrears in mortgages are reaching epidemic proportions. Therefore, interest rates can only go one way, and that poses the question: does that help or hinder our struggle with mortgages? I think that you walk through high streets in Dundalk or Wexford or Clonmel, they're ravaged by the recession. There are shop units boarded up, particularly where I live. It's just, you're looking at 15 and 16 units per street closed. I mean, in Clonmel, 4 months ago, an entire street went up for auction. There were 18 units in it. And the street, which is not a joke, was actually sold for just under €1 million with 18 units, of which 9 were rented. We look at the personal insolvency process. It's going to kick off in about 6 or 7 weeks, and we have a whole lot of people out there that believe that that's the freeway to debt forgiveness, when actually it's the twin sister of bankruptcy. You go into bankruptcy, you're going to be subject to a court assignee. You go into the debt, you go into the process that I've just mentioned, and you're going to be subject to a practitioner, which means that your customer, the consumer, is going to have even less money. This whole debate about I won't have Sky TV and my VHI has to get cut off. That's very, very real. And we're looking at 50 to 75,000 people applying for that in about 8 weeks' time. Plus we're looking at the legislation that has stopped banks from repossessing houses. That's going to be corrected in about 6 or 7 weeks' time, which is going to bring a whole slew of repossessions across the country into the market, which is going to result in ownership by banks, which is going to result in fire sales, which is going to, in my view, further hamper the recovery in the property market. So between personal insolvency, interest rates which will eventually have to go up in Europe and we get sucked along with that, and repossessions which we're reading about, I don't believe it's getting easier, I believe it's getting harder. And I get kind of annoyed now when I read the newspaper and I see 100 jobs created in Cork. The first question I ask is how many of them in 2013? When you look into it, it's probably 90 in 2016 and 10 in 2013, and we're being fed the spin the whole time, which is sending out a signal that makes you feel very isolated in the business that you have. So cash is king, and the cash that I'm referring to today is the cash that your customer has in their hand. And the point I'm making is between mortgages, compounded negative equity with repossessions, the Insolvency Act for up to 75,000 people, I believe that your customer is going to have even less disposable income in the year ahead and into 2014. Therefore, you've got to ask yourself this question: are you ready to face a recession within a recession? You, being the owner of your business, and more importantly, is your business ready? Is it robust enough to compete in what I see as almost warfare these days when you get up on Monday morning and go to work? That's a question that I've been asking as I travel around the country, and one of those reasons that I'm asking that is because while we've all been watching reruns of Vincent Brown debating the issues on a Groundhog Day cycle since 2008 as to who's responsible, the world has actually moved on from a technology point of view at a rapid pace. 6 years ago, this month, 6 years ago, there was a little gadget introduced to the European market for the first time. Only 6 years ago, it was called the iPhone, June 2007. When you think of the advances globally since the iPhone came out, you're looking at Skype, you're looking at the iPad, you're looking at this little item carrying all of the information that you require. Just think about the basics for a second. Think about YouTube, think about Facebook, Twitter. Look at Netflix, look at online banking and the way it's changing the banking system in Ireland. Look at Paddy Power and betting online. Look at Tesco. You know, where I live in Tesco are on the road the whole time. People are doing their shopping or online. Technology is moving on, and while we're all stuck behind a rock, I don't believe, from an educational point of view, we're moving on with it, number one. Number two, as a result of that, I believe that our businesses are not moving with it. And so, to give you some statistics, in 2011 in Ireland, 4 billion euros was spent online. That was an increase from 2.9 billion euros. And think about it, I still meet 52-year-old men that can't send an email. There are areas in Ireland that still don't have broadband. By 2017, which is 4 years away, it's estimated that 21 billion euros will be spent online in Ireland, the majority of it in order on clothes, sports gear and travel. The majority of that 21 billion will be spent on the move, Mobi. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we're hearing about the iPhone for the first time. Now you're nothing if you don't have your own app, apparently. You're looking at 3-year-old children in a buggy with their parents, sliding their little thumb across the phone and downloading a game and playing it. Do you have a website? Does that website for your business drive footfall into your business? Or is it there for the argument that it goes on your business card and you have a presence? Is it there for somebody just to Google you to get your telephone number, or does it stimulate actual revenue for you? I think the majority of people here would say that it doesn't stimulate any activity for them. And I think that's something that you need to take on board, because there is a lack of creativity in Irish business over the last 5 years, and there's a lack of use in understanding what creative technology can bring to business. I want to give you an example of how it changed my life, and I'm just going to digress back for 1 second. 2.5 years ago, I stood in front of a room of 250 people, and I stood up and I said, I'm the managing director of the Mordaunt Group in Clonmel, and I'm broke. And our 30-year family business is on the edge, and I don't know if I'll be here in 4 weeks' time. And that started a journey for me that has led to the recovery of my business, a new concept in motor car sales being introduced, 2 books, of which one of the books has been featured from every local newspaper in the country, right across BBC, RTE, the New York Times. How was that achieved in 2.5 years? It was achieved to the backdrop of a €17 million debt resolution with my largest creditors as well. So I haven't slept an awful lot in the last 2.5 years. I've been very busy, but I've learned a tremendous amount in the last 2.5 years, and that's why I wanted to sort of try to summarize it today to give you 3 messages going away. The first being that cash, being your customer's money, is going to become tighter and tighter and tighter, and when they go out to spend it, if you're in the florist business, you've got to make sure that it's your florist shop that they spend it in. How do you do that? You do that with the use of creative technology. I said I would give you an example of how we use that. About 2 years ago, I was running out of money. You need an awful lot of money to have cars on your forecourt. I didn't have too many cars. I didn't have an awful lot of money, so I needed a new concept. So I needed to ensure that if Ruth sat down at a computer tonight and she wanted to buy a Ford S-Max, that I was the person that jumped out. So very quickly, I went into a room with a camcorder. I recorded a 2-minute video. Literally, the camcorder was sitting on a whole lot of books. And I basically said, life's very, very busy. We've got 30 years in the motor industry. We're very good at what we do. We've got a great reputation, but it's busy for you. You've got ballet and you've got hurling and the kids and da-da-da-da-da. You tell me what you want and I'll go get it. Long story short. And then I needed to come up with a title. And this was done in one afternoon, one Saturday afternoon in 2011. So I called the company WeSourceAnyCar.com, as in the letters N-E. And literally, I got a €2,000 website. I linked it into CarZone. I put the video up. And when Mum or Dad were sitting down looking at the S-Max, they came across this little thing that said WeSourceAnyCar.com. They went in and they watched this 2-minute video and they went, geez, that's really strange. And they contacted me. And by the time they called me, I had a very good sales pitch that allowed me to effectively sell the car. We now refer to it as virtual selling. So I'm in the business of selling cars that I don't have to people that I never meet all over the country who've never visited Clonbal. And I do it 5 days a week, and I'm really busy with it. And crazy as that seems, I'm very proud of it, and I'll tell you why. Because 2 years ago I stood in front of the Society of Irish Motor Industry, and they laughed at the concept that I could get a man, and you know what, I'm saying man and not a woman, an Irish car buyer, kick the tires, touch it, feel it, look under the bonnet as if they knew something about it, that I could get them to buy a car online, the second biggest purchase of your life, without seeing it, without test driving it. And folks, it's happening everywhere. Literally, I would be in conversation with a guy and he would say, okay, we have a deal. It's got to be a BMW 5 Series, it's got to be white, it can't have more than 35,000 miles, I'll pay you 38,000 euros, I'm going to transfer my 10% deposit into your bank account, which is refundable if we don't get the car, and off we go. And it works brilliantly. And I'm saying to you that if I can get people to spend money online without ever being with me in a room, on the second biggest purchase of their life being a car, you're dead in the water if you're a florist, if you're a jeweler, if you're a boutique owner, if you're a restaurant owner, if you're not engaging digitally, electronically, with technology the way that we have. WeSourceAnyCar.com has been a website that has effectively steered my recovery. And the only way to beat the recession is to find more clients effectively. I'll just give you a quick backdrop to that. For 25 years we were a Nissan dealer. Nissan command 10% of the Irish car market. Okay, so I decided to nail my colours to the Nissan mast. Therefore I was effectively ruling myself out of 90% of the car, of national car business. That's like owning a boutique and taking the ugliest jeans that you can find that only 10% of the people like and putting them on the shelf and sticking with it for 25 years. Sometimes you need to stand back. Sometimes you need to get on an airplane and go and be on your own for a week with the sole purpose of finding 4 or 5 ideas that you can bring back to your business to implement. Research, education, creative thinking, technology, absolutely key. Because change is about us. At a rapid pace, this country is changing right before our very eyes, but we still stand in the drapery shop door on a Monday morning sweeping the fag butts away, saying there's nothing going on. And there isn't nothing going on just because of the recession. There's a lot not going on because it's happening online. I work with a whole lot of young people. They never go shopping. My wife owns a boutique, and it pisses me off because I see these guys coming in with Littlewoods and with Next because they don't have time. The change is massive. And I want to demonstrate change to you for a second. Now, I did write 2 books. I can't spell and I can't read, so bear with me. But I wrote this in the book, which demonstrates the change that's happening around us. If someone had walked up to me on St. Patrick's Day 2008 and said to me, by the time you reach the same day in 2013, the British Queen would not have not only visited Ireland, but she would have been so welcomed by the Irish people that she would have returned to Northern Ireland to shake the hand of Martin McGuinness, you would have said I was mad. If that person had gone on to say that by 2012 Ireland would be losing over 1,000 people a week to emigration, the Fianna Fáil would have been decimated in an election and reduced to just 20 seats, that the Irish taxpayer would own permanent TSB and AIB and a large chunk of Bank of Ireland, that Anglo-Irish Bank no longer existed, that we the public had bailed out bondholders for billions of euros, that Sean Quinn would have served time and would be bankrupt, and that a bank called NAMA would hold the biggest property portfolio of property in the world, you would have said that I was cracked. Furthermore, if I had said to you that the European single currency, being the euro, nearly collapsed 3 times in the year 2012, all to the backdrop of a massive baby boom in Ireland, I mean, figure that out, right? You would have said that I was a nut job. But it gets better. You've got to pay a property tax for your home, you've got to pay water charges for your water, and you can buy an entire housing estate with 15 houses on it, and 3 acres and planning permission for a restaurant for 150,000 euros, you would have said I was cracked. The world is changing rapidly, and the reason that so many of us are struggling in business is because we're not changing with it. We're not researching any longer, we're not driving our businesses with the same entrepreneurial gusto that we did the day that we started it up. I'll put it this way to you, there's an awful lot of people in the room today that can't drive their business because they are so preoccupied with debt, banks, negative equity, with buy-to-lets that are hanging out of them, where they're going to be working for 15 years and still end up on the wrong side. There's so many 45-year-old men and women who are 48 or 50 years of age who have their home mortgages on interest only at the moment, have 2 kids 24 months away from going to college, have no pension plans, are living for here and now. This is the country we live in. is a here and now country. None of us think further down the line. None of us have an analytical view. None of us ever do anything to try and do something different. And so I say to the people that are here today that are having debt issues, I say to them that it's very important that you understand that there are choices available to you right now. Whatever you do, bring about and affect a change in your life that allows you to getting back to drive your business. Right? Be that bankruptcy, because it brings an end to the misery that so many people are in. Be that personal insolvency, or do what I did, which is a debt resolution program with your creditors. As has been seen in the media, I was one of the first people to do that process, and it was an extremely painful process, and it took 3 years out of my life and another 10 to follow it. The point being that it gave me certainty to pain. As Sean Dunn said, the certainty of pain is better than the uncertainty of pain. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying is, make a decision when you leave here today that, be it in your emotional life, your financial life, your corporate life, make the decision that you need to affect change. Change to recover your corporate position, change to give you a quality of life that we all haven't had for the last 5 years, change to just bring about an end for some people to the miserable existence that we have. When you go whitewater rafting in Canada on holidays, when they put the rubber or the life thing onto you and the helmet, the last thing you'll hear the guy say when he's pushing you into the rapids is, if you fall out, you need to remember that you need to be an active participant in your own rescue. It's a stunning piece of advice. Somebody gave it to me 2.5 years ago. They said, George, your bank is not going to do it for you, your economy won't do it for you, your government are not going to do it for you, and the Europeans don't care about you. If you want to recover, you've got to do it. You've got to become an active participant in your own rescue, to drive your business again, to have a future income for yourself, to deal with the issues that you might have today. Be those issues mortgage arrears, be those issues that your business is losing customers. There's only so many turning off the lights and cutting staff that we can do, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to be an active participant in your rescue. You've got to bring about a certain end to the misery that we're in. And then you've got to get back to understanding how you drive on your business using creative technology. Driving up here today, I said if I could tell the people 3 things, what would it be? And the first is that you need to be an active participant in your rescue. The second is that you're nobody in business if you can't take another 20% off the current cost base that you have, and that if you don't understand the technological advances that are coming down the line and that have blossomed over the last 2 years, 3 years. And finally, I wanted to say that this book, obviously I'm promoting the book, but this book is important to me because it has a message. The message of this book is all of what I've talked about today. Dealing with debt, dealing with the ramifications of having that debt, dealing with the emotional fallout of the struggle that we've all been involved in with our businesses, engaging in creative business, and getting back to having some aspect of a life. That's what the book is about, and I hope some people go and buy the book over the next couple of days and share the story with people, because it's, for me, really, really important. Finally, because I know you're going to wave me off, I've never talked so fast in my life. Finally, I have to say to you that I passionately believe about the story that I'm trying to send through, both in this book and in Shepherd's Pie. And the story is that we as a country have done the admirable thing by putting our hands in our pocket and doing what we did. But I have some disappointment in how we reacted to what's gone on in the country over the last 5 years. And so my advice today to you is, don't live for the here and now. Start planning for 2 and 3 years down the road. It's vitally important, in my opinion, because I think we're facing a recession. And I talk about everything outside of Dublin City because I think rural Ireland has been left behind, it's been forgotten about. It's Dublin, 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 and it really gets me going. I'm going to end on a quote and say this to you, and I'm open to any questions that anybody would like to ask, and I apologise if that was very jumbled, but I hope the message got through. There's a quote in the book here which came from a guy called W. Edwards Deming, and it says, "It's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory." And I think that sums up exactly what I wanted to talk about today. Get back to driving your businesses, be creative, engage with technology, carry out research, educate yourself, and ensure that your business, no matter what, stands out ahead of everybody else when it comes for that customer who has a limited amount of cash in their hands when it comes to them spending money. Thank you very much.
And all 1 minute BBC.
And I have to tell you, that was very well rehearsed coming up in the car today. I've been given out about the media because you go on and do these speeches, and I was doing Bobby Kerr last Sunday morning, and at 9 o'clock on a bank holiday Sunday morning, the sun was out. I reckon they couldn't get anybody else to drive up and do it. But it was 12 minutes, and all of a sudden, when you start talking about writing off debt, and I was saying to Ruth, writing off debt and dealing with debt write-off and the moral hazard issue, the phone lines just went electric. And I said to Bobby when we came off air, the media need to give people like me 40 minutes, 45 minutes to get the full story across, because it's really, really important, the message that I have to tell, because we lost it all and we recovered. And what we've achieved in the last 2.5 years wasn't an ingenious plan. It was a little bit of luck, a little bit of enthusiasm, a lot of creativity, and an awful lot of negotiation. And I just want to share that with people. I've signed a non-disclosure agreement, one of the gagging orders with the bank, so there's only so much that I can talk about it. But everything that you read about, and I'm going to stop now, but everything you read about in the paper about your Sky TV and all that stuff, right? Deals are being, it's all true by the way, deals are being done daily. 2 people yesterday that I recommended to see somebody 12 months ago had 11.2 million euros written off at 11 o'clock yesterday morning by Allied Irish banks. Both wives came out with tears in their eyes of joy because they got to hold their home. 4 months ago, I was in the fight of my life to hold my home, even though it's the one loan that I've always paid. But the bank wanted me out of it. It's bloody ruthless out there, and all that bullshit that you're hearing on prime time, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's waffle. The family home is up for grabs. They're coming for it aggressively, and that's the kind of information that I want to share with people. It's really, really dog out there. But very simply, I will say on a positive that if you want to do a deal with the bank, if you want to write off debt, now there has never been a better time. We dreamt about it 5 years ago. It's happening 10, 15 times a day in every town in Ireland right now. Not that you're reading about it in the paper because of the gagging orders. Anyway, questions?
I just heard you speak recently on the radio like that for a few seconds, but I could come in and out. And one of the reasons why I'm here today is to hear what you had to say. And I must say, 20 minutes, I could do it another 20 minutes.
I know, yeah, I know, it says
a lot of sense.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I was at the Claire Byrne show because I got some grief on that.
Yeah, and funny, I got emails from a couple of people afterwards, listen to this guy, what he's saying.
Yeah, it's, you know, I've achieved an awful lot with the media, but it's very hard to break into it. Neville Maguire did a speech after me recently, so I take it that it's another buck up that I'm following him today. So I didn't see him before he went out, but thank you for that. Sorry.
I want to commend you because I know that you walk the walk, because a client of mine told me there recently that when things really got bad for him, he knew about your book, he phoned you up, and a year on he's saying, only for you, he wouldn't be back where he is, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
You must have got inspiration likewise and assistance. Where did you look to when things were really bad for you?
Genuinely, my 2 kids.
Yeah.
And you know, George is 12 and Emily is going to be 16 on Tuesday, and we've protected them from everything that went on. When they read the first book, Shepherd's Pie, I remember my daughter started to cry because I think she could understand it, and she didn't quite get what we had gone through. And we're very conscious now because the profile is quite high. We're conscious of how people react in school, because as I said to Ruth, the first book, I was applauded for my honesty. I'm getting crucified on the second book because of the debt write-off issue, and I just feel I haven't been able to express the reasons why we all need our debt written off. But my 2 kids, I felt if I didn't get the banks to back off, I was going to have a stroke, or I was going to be found dead in the shower or something. And then ultimately I saw my 2 kids paying the price, because I, in my mind, saw myself being bullied in the schoolyard by the bank manager. And I just decided in the middle of the night one night that I was going to fight back the next morning, and I started to bite back and kick back, and I started to do everything that they were doing to me. I bombarded them with emails and phone calls, and I just started to move forward. And the kids, you know, have gotten through it very, very well, and they don't give a monkey's where I am now, you know. News Talk, RTE, up in Monaghan making a speech, couldn't care less. I don't even know if they know that I'm here. They know that I'm somewhere, but it was them. It was genuinely them, because I felt at one stage that if I didn't do something, it would cost them. What a mistake by a parent for kids to have to pick up the pieces in that respect. So it was them. Sorry.
Just interesting, you know, what is it do you think within the human spirit? You know, is it resilience, or is it dealing with people, eventually starting to deal with people being in the bank that are actually maybe decent and willing to compromise on some of these issues?
Well, it's interesting. One day when I was going to one of the banks, the guy, and was a very senior guy, asked me when I meet his boss. I climbed quite high up in the bank in terms of talking to people. And they brought me into a corridor like outside and they said, look, we've got a humanitarian crisis within the bank. Our staff are committing suicide, our staff are going out depressed because they're being pushed into a room to deal with people like me, deal with people that were on the edge, and they weren't trained for that. And they asked me, could I make an awareness of that in the media? And what was really crazy is that the bank, one of the pillar banks, we call it Bank A, which is referred to in the book, I owed them over 10.5 million euros, and on Christmas week 2011, I have great pride about this, they sent a courier to Clonmel for books, for shepherd's pie. All the senior staff from the chief executive down had made the decision to read the book over Christmas because they wanted to understand what it was like to deal with people from the other side of the desk. And it became a bit of a sort of a guide to understanding what it was like. So I felt sorry for an awful lot of the bank officials, firstly. Secondly, I think some of the bank officials are driven by mean-spiritedness, by personalities, by vendettas. There's a lot of guys out there that have never borrowed, never built, never hired, never fired, never done anything, yet they're destroying people's lives. I remember asking permission to set up a number of houses that I had for £1 million, and they said no, and we recently sold them for 500,000 euros. You know, whose decision, who's accountable for that decision? I listened to Ruby Wax coming up here on the radio today because she's after going to Oxford and she's learned about how to deal with the human mind and depression, and Stephen Fry this week who tried to kill himself. And so in answer to your question, I'd say this to you. I don't suffer from depression and I never contemplated killing myself, thank God. But to have to deal with what I dealt with and to have suffered from depression must be overbearing, and I don't know how people have been able to do it, and obviously some people haven't been able to do it. Somebody asked me in an interview during the sexual abuse thing from 18 months ago, what makes an abused child become an adult? That adult, do they go left and become an abuser, or go right and become a champion for the abused? What's the turning point? And my own belief, and I've no education in this, my own belief is it depends on the support that you have behind you. It depends on your family and on your wife. And I've always said, if you've got somebody that you can go home and kneel down in front of them, put your head in their lap and cry openly, that's a good start. And I would also say to you that I meet a lot of people on a sort of a one-to-one advisory thing, and interestingly, women are far more rational, feet on the ground, are willing to take the fight on, just want to get their husband back and get their life back, whereas men are full of shit. They're absolutely full of pride, full of nonsense, hang on, it'll recover, disastrous stuff, and they prolong the agony for everybody. So I think it's about a good relationship. I think an awful lot of men are going through this without having told their wife the true extent of it, and I think if you can get your wife on board and the two of you can tackle it together, you've got a great chance of overcoming it.
Can I just ask you about your web video? Do you think it was more effective than having a two-page website?
Yes.
Okay.
We've now taken down the amateur one that we did and put it slightly more professional, because I know you're all going to go and have a look at it.
This is the interaction.
It was 2 minutes of, there was no editing on this. You just draw it right in and say it all out. You think today was fast, and then a big reach over to turn it off at the end. I think it was because I was able to. I think it was because I was able to say it with humility and to say, listen, I could really do with the business. I know what we're at with 30 years experience, and I know life is busy because I've got young kids. So, you've nothing to lose by giving me a call. It's hard to put that across in writing or in text because people don't read.
It's hard to tell people to spend 2,000 on a website when they're currently scratching for cash.
Yes, it is, yeah. And I would say this to you, my wife has a boutique and she's seen all the competition come and go, and she has perfected it. And when I was there telling her 6 years ago, open 3 more of them, she said, I'm not like you. And wasn't she right? I just want to perfect the one that I have. So when you walk in, that you can smell all these aromas and oils, and she's anal on it, but it works brilliantly. But she's telling me that Facebook is accounting for about 25% of her weekly turnover at this point in time and growing. and she's doing it very effectively. It's called The Wardrobe. She has a website as well, and you can buy online, but it's Facebook that's doing it. And she gets a dress, and she displays it beautifully, takes a photograph, she puts it up on Facebook, she gives the price and a little bit of narrative as to who the designer is, and literally people just start coming in and buying it. She's also had to reinvent the wheel, because she was selling an average garment for €300. Now the average dress is sort of 65 quid, 70 quid. And she's had to change as well. Change. It's so important. You know, somebody asked me recently, if the fairy godmother walked into the room and gave you one wish, what would it have been over the last 2 years? And I'll share it with you. It would have been to put me into a deep sleep, and that when I wake up, I get to start all over again. Right? In business, that is. So the question is, what would you do differently? And I think that's a really important question. We've had to start all over again. We threw out Nissan, we threw out Kia, we threw out Renault, and all those new car franchising and all that, what is, in my view, icing on the cake. You know, and we got into dealing in used cars with a slight quirk, and it worked really well. And that's what she's done in the shop as well. So Facebook is probably the quickest way.
Do you use testimonials for
No.
sales?
No, we tried to get a number of customers to come in and allow us to video them, and but just making it happen was impossible. And we were revamping everything at Christmas time, and the weather was bad. But yes, if I was doing it again, and we will be at some point, I will use testimonials.
What's your website?
We've two, mordauntgroup.com and wesourceanycar.com.
If you had
NE is N-E-A-N-Y.
Any, yeah.
if you had control of the banks, or if you were in government, what would be your approach to the recession, or to guys like yourself in terms of debt? How would you approach it?
If you say that again?
If you had controls of the banks, or if you're in the government and you had some
Oh
input
yeah,
into
absolutely.
what,
I don't
what would your
believe that
approach?
anybody, Bernard McNamara, Sean Dunn, Sean Quinn, and I've no love for any of them, I don't believe any of them should be taken out of business. We're slowly extinguishing the entrepreneurial spirit that built this country. It wasn't Google that built here, it wasn't Dell. It was, you know, it was people 30 years ago and 40 years ago. Somebody like Sean Quinn, who did what he did, I think he should remain within the organisation in some capacity and have some responsibility for helping to recover, rather than just take all these people and send them to Africa and India and the UK. So the country's been taken over by civil servants, bank officials, politicians, and the entrepreneurial spirit that is being extinguished slowly, and I think that's a really dangerous thing.
But do you think those guys have any responsibility for what happened? I mean, in terms
I do,
of
yeah. I think we all have a collective responsibility, but I would say this year, I think the banks have a responsibility, I think entrepreneurs have a responsibility, and I think I have a responsibility. However, what I would say to you is, if we didn't have the farmer and the jewellery shop owner and the salesman and the florist and all those people over the last 30 years taking a punt, buying a greenfield site, paying the charges to the local authorities, building it up and hiring and doing all that, we'd be going around in horse and carts right now.
Right, now last question, and then we'll...
I just want to ask you is that you're looking from your perspective from 30 years ago, and I'm sort of starting out from 2-3 years now at this stage. And my experience is I didn't know the good times as a business person. Okay, I know now that I have to open up and harder, do a lot more business development, go to events. What I find now is that there's more startups now at this particular time is creating new businesses for the future. We'll be a lot more savvier in relation to where we are now than we were say 10 years ago, 90s. So when you say there's no entrepreneurial spirit, and this is where we share with you, and just to put that back, you said, if we're not entrepreneurial, why is there so many startups starting every single year?
Bluntly, there's an awful lot of startups and guys that shut down on Friday, that have bought shelf companies that are analysed in the newspapers as startups. I would have been one of them, but you're right, there's an awful lot of people taking a punt, and one of the speeches that I do is that you don't have to emigrate to have a successful business. You can do so in Ireland. What I mean by entrepreneurial spirit, I mean the bigger guys, not me, not you. I mean the guys that really drive it on. I think that they're being eradicated bit by bit, and future investment will suffer. I think if you can do your business now and keep your chin clean for 2 or 3 years, you'll benefit from the good times when they do return, in whatever shape they return. But the challenge for you when that happens is to not make the mistakes that we all made. I never knew downturn. I only grew up in a time of double-digit growth. I never saw a slump. There was no risk factor. It just was always going to keep growing, and that's what caught me. And that confidence, cash and confidence, mixed together is an explosive quantity, and that's what destroyed what we had.
And just on that point, what would be best piece of advice for people like yourself starting out again?
I would say to you, somebody said to me recently, if you haven't got a business cost base that is a no-brainer, right, you're dead. Okay, a no-brainer. In other words, if it's sunshine this week, because everybody's complaining about business this week, you need to be in a position where you can shut it down, go away for a week, go fishing, come back when it's busy again. There's a whole lot of us there that have to be there to make it busy, and then when it is busy, we have to be there because it is busy. So it's a constant cycle. So I would say to you, a cost base that is a no-brainer. The job, and I'm going to stop in 30 seconds, the job I do now, I've got headphones in from 9 to 6 every day talking to people about cars. Whether I'm in a big glass showroom or sitting on the toilet at home, it really is irrelevant to those people because they only meet me to collect the car. So I'm not going to retain my big showroom anymore with 25,000 euro rates and all that kind of stuff because I don't need it. Therefore I can do exactly what I'm doing on 20,000 euros less of a monthly overhead base by moving a half a mile down the road. I'm going to do it. If you've got a shoe shop and you're friendly with the boutique next door, can the two of you come together on half the rates and half the rent and all that? That's what it's going to take going forward, in my opinion.